Director of National. And you'll give us an update on, I'm just going to say what some of these statistics are, but you'll do it too, I'm sure. 20 million square feet of office space, 26,000 residential units, and 4 million square feet of retail. And that's an incredible portfolio. It's a challenge. And through all of the changing times that we are living through, it seems like every month there's something different to contend with. Rob Mandle, tell us about yourself and tell us about National Landing.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Anita. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay as I get started here. Always good to check on that first. Press successfully the unmute button. But as Anita said, my name is Rob Mandle. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the National Landing BID Business Improvement District. Sometimes people swap the I for investment, which is kind of okay in our mind. But thanks so much for having me. I'm always excited to share what's going on in what we like to call Northern Virginia's downtown. I think more and more people are going to recognize this area as that as we kind of grow and deliver on some of the promises of more destination style activities. And I think that's a space where if you measure us up against downtowns, that's the space we have the biggest room, the most room to grow, so to speak. But we're situated in a great region, and I always feel like what we do here is so important for all of Arlington, even if you're single family homeowner, or you don't live in the cores of any of the urban villages. But what happens in our urban villages, as Arlington likes to call them, is so critical because our tax base in Arlington is supported 50-50 by the commercial base versus the single family tax base. So all of the great amenities and services that were provided in Arlington to support the quality of life that we come to expect and love, and why people choose Arlington really is grounded in successful economic development efforts in our urban areas. It's unusual for a 50-50 split to happen. Usually it's more like 80-20. I think Fairfax County, for example, would be is very jealous of our tax base split. But a little bit about me. I have a background in economics and environmental studies. Went to school up at a small liberal arts college in Maine, Bowdoin College. Came down to DC after I graduated to work for a consultant and focused on some smart growth work, some less exciting work in my book, focused on cost benefit analyses of force protection standards for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which drove me into I think really my next step in my career, which was to go to Virginia Tech for my Master's of Urban and Regional Planning. They just opened up a school focused on working professionals in Old Town Alexandria. They're now actually located in Ballston, which would have been great for me since after college I was a bit of a nomad. I lived all over Arlington. I lived in Ballston and Courthouse, and then eventually Crystal City. I think it was 11 different places that I lived in over a 5-year period. Brief stint down in Norfolk, Virginia as well after I got married. But I have been working for this organization since 2007. At that time, it was focused exclusively on Crystal City. We've since broadened our organization's focus to include the entire downtown area. And I'll get into that a little bit more. About 10 years ago, my family and I, we ended up moving into the district. Ironically enough, I tell people at that time, we were in search of housing that we can afford. We wanted to buy a house, and it was DC that delivered that for us. Don't think it can do that anymore, but we live in the Petworth neighborhood. We chose a place that was still easily accessible to National Landing. I think of myself as a regional citizen. I spent most of my time in Arlington in my professional life. the baseball and soccer games are starting to eat into that a little bit over in DC with my boys. But we chose a place that was easily accessible to National Landing, by car, by transit, and actually by bike. And ironically, I get here fastest when I actually choose two wheels. A recent e-bike convert, and get over here in about 35 minutes, which is pretty nice. So that's a little bit about me. And let's see if I can advance the slides properly. Okay, here's a little bit about my organization. The National Landing Bid is a public-private partnership that's formed through a collaboration between private landowners in the area and Arlington County. Our whole purpose is to market, promote, and enhance the economic development climate for this particular area of Arlington. We kind of consider ourselves chief storytellers, so a lot of marketing, placemakers. So we do a lot of events and focus on kind of storytelling in the public realm. So doing activations and kind of surprise and delight, or what I like to call happy bits of happenstance across the urban environment. And just generally, we're advocates for the area. We really want to support the economic development focus for this area. And as I said, to benefit the broader Arlington County community. We have a budget of about 4.4 million. It's kind of waffled a little bit over the last 2 years, a little bit of pandemic impact. Our bid district is about 3/4 of the square mile, but we actually look at a broader area. I'll get into this in a little bit, but our broader area is about 1 square mile. We focus on marketing, promotion, beautification. Unlike other bids, a lot of times this bucket is really encompassing of what we call clean and safe teams in the industry. So in DC, for example, you'll have uniformed people. Even in Roslyn, they have this uniformed staff members picking up trash, emptying trash cans, etc. Our bid doesn't have that explicit focus at the moment, though there's some talk about how we evolve into a more traditional bid as we kind of grow into the downtown environment. We were established in 2006, really a manifestation of base realignment and closure. This area was hit really hard by BRAC, Arlington in general, the region in general, but Crystal City specifically, lost about 2 million square feet of leased space right after a patent and trademark office left, and right after a huge DOD tenant had left in 2000. So that 2005 BRAC legislation was a huge deal, and that really drove the stakeholders to come together with Arlington and devise a plan for how do we get out of this mess. Crystal City had been coasting for a number of years, very successful, but was starting to see the pains of competition with other urban markets that were focusing more on, a true urban environment, right? In Crystal City, at the time, it was one of the things that it had a lot going for it in terms of access and mobility, but it didn't really have an active street environment, and that was becoming more in vogue. And so the county, in collaboration with the owners, established this two-pronged strategy: create a sector plan on how you redevelop and transform Crystal City over a period of about 40 years, and then establish a placemaking organization that became the bid to build momentum towards that and to tell the story about how we get there. So that's kind of where, that's a little bit about us. It's about as quick as we could do that part. So many of you probably remain unfamiliar or confused about the name National Landing. Where did it come from? What happened to Crystal City? Rest assured, the Crystal City, Pentagon City, Potomac Yard names still exist. What we like to explain this as National Landing is an umbrella term that encompasses a whole downtown. Within that downtown, you have these great neighborhoods of Crystal City, Pentagon City, and Potomac Yard. Well, why do you even need that? Why is that important? Well, I think that at the same time that the bid was actually thinking about how we promote and kind of consolidate the market perception of this area, because we saw it as one place, right? This place functions as one place, but people don't think about it that way. Arlington and Alexandria were also struggling with this in the pitch to Amazon in 2000. 1718. So they actually came up with this name, Arlington and Alexandria's Economic Development Offices, as a way to tell a story about this consolidated area. Now, we, like I said, were in parallel thinking about this. We actually had hired a consultant to help us think about names. We were looking at history. We actually engaged the community. Really, it was really hard. I mean, name changes are really difficult. Especially you don't want to elevate past history that might be inappropriate today. And then you want to also be authentic. Those things are very challenging. What we found was because Arlington and Alexandria had crafted a name that had national exposure, it just made sense to use it. And our promise in our brand promise was really we're going to bring in this new umbrella term to define the whole area, but we're preserving what we think has a lot of brand value and a lot of love from the community are the individual names themselves. So let's go to the next slide. So here you can kind of see the broader geography that I just described in its context throughout kind of the DC region. We are Virginia's largest walkable downtown. I'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. But we have some incredible mobility assets that really position us well. I mean, that's why we exist as an urban downtown, is because we had great road access into downtown. It was a really like get out as quick as we can kind of thing when it was envisioned, and as kind of like the post downtown drivable density is kind of how planners described it at the time. But it was very successful over its first 40 years of life. It built out 12 million square feet of office within this broad area. It does not include the Pentagon, which is another 6 million square feet of space. At its peak, daytime population of about 50,000 people and a robust residential population with about 22,000 residents and growing. But why is it so important to think about this area as one unified submarket? Well, we were seeing ourselves in a way that nobody else was really seeing us. That we were actually a true downtown. So even like the co-stars of the world, so the brokers that are trying to sell commercial space, lease commercial space, the county, everybody was thinking, motion sensors don't work that great. Hold on one sec. Here we go. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. Everybody was kind of thinking about these three areas separately. And, when you put them together, it's just the classic case of the sum of all parts are greater than the individuals. I'm so bad at analogies, I should stop doing that. But what we did to help tell this story was compare ourselves, benchmark ourselves to other downtowns that people actually are familiar with, have a connection to in many cases. Our favorite one is downtown Austin. So the little orange shape, the polygon you see there, is the downtown Austin geography. Not Austin city limits, downtown Austin. And you can see it's almost the same amount of space. It's a little bit bigger. Like I said earlier, we're about 1 square mile, and it has 10.2 million square feet of office. If you remember just the previous slide, we have 12 million. So we have more commercial office space than a highly recognized and highly praised downtown in Texas. Indianapolis was one. We want to do one in the Midwest. It's kind of a rising star downtown. Same thing. This is just the downtown geography. It's huge, and it has 12.4 million square feet of office, but it's 7 times the size. Downtown Miami. This is one of the favorite ones we like. 14 million square feet of commercial space, so it's a little bit bigger in both geography and in office space. But as you'll see on the future slides, we're headed towards 18 plus 19 million, 20 million square feet of commercial space within our district. And then downtown Richmond, close to home. It's also a huge geography. 3 square miles, 14, almost 15 million square feet of office. I think this might even be a little bit overestimated at the moment. We've got 12, what did I say just a second ago, 5 million square feet, 6 million square feet in the Pentagon. We blow them out of the water. So I think this was really helpful when we were telling the story about our umbrella term for National Landing, because we're a downtown of substance. And if you want to compete with these places, we have to be recognized on the same level as them. So that was something that was really important to us.
Rob, we have a couple of questions. One of them is, have you guys thought about better transportation options to get to the Long Bridge Athletic Facility? You know, the bus stop, there isn't a bus stop right there, and walking from the metro or the nearest bus stop isn't something that a lot of our members can easily handle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm happy to take some questions here and there. This is one that I'll probably punt on a little bit. This is, we have a lot of mobility infrastructure underway. I think most notably, I'll get to the slide in a minute, but it's $4 billion worth of infrastructure investment. Now, this specific kind of mobility need, I know is a very important one for the county. There was a lot of talk when the planning for this park was underway, how you get people up there. I don't think anybody's really figured it out. They did build bus stops, but then never delivered a bus service. So I think it's something that is on our minds. How do you make sure that people can access this space easily? Walkability is so important, as is getting there on 2 wheels. And then we know that for folks in National Landing who live in National Landing or go to work there, walking there is the way they get there along the Esplanade. So it's kind of a non-answer. We haven't specifically explored how we solve that problem, other than upping all of our walkability and all of our biking networks so that people can get there by means other than just driving.
Okay, there's another question here. It seems like the 23rd Street is an older retail area. What are the oldest neighborhoods and retail areas within National Landing?
Well, I would say that's twofold. 23rd Street is definitely one of them. They've been around, some of the businesses there have been around for 40 years. Portofino, I think Freddy's celebrated their 25-year anniversary recently. And then the sports pub, Staples. I'm sure there's others that I'm missing, but they're staples and have been around for a very long time. And they deliver a lot of soul for Crystal City, to be honest. And it's a very important part of our community. A lot of authenticity is kind of emanating out of there. It's where our nightlife is, but we want to grow it and expand it. But the other part that I would kind of think about, and I'm going to be purposeful and not talk a lot about the mall, which is obviously an important economic engine. Technically not in our boundary, but it's in our downtown boundary. But I don't think it's exactly what the question was trying to get at. But the underground, the Crystal City Shops, has a lot of great legacy businesses as well. Small businesses that have been operating for many years. And I know they're in a real rough patch right now. They're struggling, not just from the pandemic, but from the changing preferences of the demographic here. And construction. Construction is a big part of that too. But what we've found is, like I said earlier, one of the competitive advantages that other urban villages that were emerging had ahead of Crystal City was walkability outside on the street. And as we advance that through redevelopment and county mobility projects, more people are actually choosing to walk outside. It's more logical, it's more clear, it's actually quicker, and people feel safe because we no longer have these 45-mile-an-hour highway-like couplets throughout Crystal City, because that's what we used to have. right? It made a lot of sense to separate pedestrians when traffic didn't stop and it was going 45 miles an hour all around. So those are the two places that we kind of think about. And obviously our goal is to create new nodes of activity as we have new development emerge, more heads and beds, as we say, which delivers the demand you need to support retail activity.
I got
How
a comment
about
here that there's some people that confuse National Harbor and National Landing. Do you get that, or is that something that you guys are working to distinguish yourselves?
We do get that a fair amount. I think it's an inevitable confusion. We're both talking about national. Landing also makes you think about boat landings sometimes. So we've kind of walked into that one and accept it. But we still think there's a lot of work to do for brand awareness. Generally, I think we've seen over the last, gosh, I guess it's been 4 years now since it rolled out with the Amazon announcement. But generally, people know about it. They're still just somewhat confused. And usually when we share some of what I shared above, they kind of get it. But our understanding is that for most people, if you really want to tell people where your house is or where your apartment is or where that restaurant is, they're going to use the specific neighborhood, right? It's in Crystal City. Costco is in Pentagon City. Harris Teeter is in Potomac Yard. Virginia Tech's Innovation Campus is going to be in Potomac Yard, right? When we're pitching the whole area from an economic development perspective, we'll say National Landing, right? We'll talk about it in a more broad sense so that people really get the sell that these are part of one place. Super important for that dynamic. How about I keep going, because maybe some of these little bits of these questions will be answered, but also enhanced. I'm definitely trying to make sure I save some time, but I gotta probably move a little quicker. I talk a lot. So let me keep going. Obviously, if there's a real burning one, definitely stop. But I kind of laid out where we are in terms of being a very important major downtown, but where we're headed is incredibly exciting. This is our development outlook. This is the entire National Landing geography in Arlington. We have over 35 projects, commercial, residential, retail, in the pipeline at some stage of the pipeline. About a dozen of those projects are under construction right now. Those are those kind of gray boxes. And then the blue ones are proposed or approved. They just haven't entered into construction yet. 35 projects. That's billions of dollars of investment. I think our calculations are around $12 billion of construction. That's incredible. You pair that with the $4 billion of transportation investment that's happening. It's unbelievable what's happening here. And any downtown would be happy to get a tenth of that in terms of a transformative, like game-changing moment. Really, really exciting. Breaking those numbers down a little bit. Right now we have about 5,500 hotel rooms. We're actually the second largest hotel district outside of downtown. Well, actually, we're the largest one outside of downtown DC. That's a really important market for us. We have about 16,000 residential units and, like we said earlier, over 12 million square feet of commercial space. Very important. Arlington's legacy of great planning really helped create what is a balanced downtown. So having 16,000 residential units translates to about 23,000 people, balances out in that office space. Usually that supports about, that can support up to 50,000 people, right? So having the residents present as well as the hotels means there's people here when those other people go home after work. That's something right now, if you go to downtown DC right now, for every one resident that lives downtown, there's 12 office workers, which is not very good if you want to maintain an active environment. And think about when half of those office workers, or let's say it's 60% of those office workers aren't coming in every day because of the pandemic. That's really hurt downtown DC, we've seen a much different scenario in this area because of that balance. Vibrant streets, lots of people out and about, pretty much consistently, but especially now. Even though our office occupancy in terms of people coming back to the office is still relatively low and behind the national average. The pipeline, we've got one hotel project in the pipeline that's at Pentagon Center, 8,000 residential units, and another 8 million square feet of office. That's almost exclusively Amazon's office. But for a lot of the conversations about adding office is pairing that growth with residential space in our downtown maintains that balance that I talked about a few moments ago. So really important to have that happening so that we can continue to maintain the balance. And I talked about economic impact for all of Arlington. Right now, our fiscal impact is about 71 million net. So that is after you account for expenses that go to things happening in National Landing. Arlington earns in its coffers $71 million. That goes to supporting our other interests, right, throughout Arlington. That's after paying for schools. So it's an incredible benefit to supporting the quality of life in Arlington. That's going to grow $100 million as this development is realized over the next 15 to 20 years. A very, very big deal. So what are some of the projects going on? I'm going to breeze through these really quick. They're mostly beautiful renderings, but these are all under construction projects. Obviously, well, except for the next one. This is Met Park. It's going to open this upcoming summer. The park itself is going to open in the spring. Incredible asset, 2.5 million square feet of office. This is right across, kind of across from Costco, right? A little bit over. Penn Place, we're expecting sometime in the next couple months, it'll actually break ground on this project. But this is the helix that you've probably seen and talked about a fair amount at previous coffees or amongst yourselves. Really interesting architecture that will deliver an interesting skyline for the area. The Milton is a residential project. It's on the Pentagon Center block. It is all rental. Pretty much all the projects I'm going to show here are rentals, save for one possibility, which I'll point out. The Sage actually has started leasing up. This is located right at 12th and Eads, right across from the Whole Foods. Central District is actually a retail project. It's the first major project by the new owner, JBG Smith, after they came in and replaced Vornado. That's an Amazon Fresh on the ground floor. Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, so a theater, and then a whole bunch of kind of entertainment opportunities along the stretch here. If you recall, this was not an active retail environment in the past, so it is completely different now. I just picked up my Amazon Fresh lunch necessities for this week yesterday, just a short walk up the street. So that's a huge game changer for both the residential community and the office community here. More residential projects. This is at 2000 Well South Bell Street. This actually replaces an office building. A huge trend in the region is to take down obsolete office, replace it with residential. It's a big move that they're going to do downtown in DC. It's about 1,200 units going in between these two buildings. This is right at 20th and Route 1. The water park, one of our beloved spaces in Crystal City, if not a little bit underutilized in the past, is being re-envisioned a bit. It is private property. Often folks aren't aware that it's owned by the developer. They wanted to figure out a way to activate it more and turn it into something that was more used by the community. It's a pretty standard practice to figure out how to get, I think it's 10 different uses inside of a park to make sure that it always feels like something's happening. Part of that solution was retail. So they're going to have, I think it's 9 retail kiosks. I think 7 of those are already leased. And they're focusing on women and minority-owned businesses that could have the potential to grow into bigger retail establishments throughout National Landing Arlington and the region. So really excited about that. It's also going to have a water bar up top. This is directly across from the theater, so we see a lot of real amazing synergies in terms of creating a kind of a destination feel. Dining in the park, it's another situation where there's a privately owned open space along the retail stretch of Crystal Drive, underutilized space, though quite beautiful. Commitment was to make another retail environment that would kind of enhance the biophilic nature of the open space itself that sits on top of the parking garage. I'm going to forget the chef's name, but the Surreal is the establishment going in there, and a very well-known chef. So we're excited to add this into our culinary portfolio. Paired with Met Park is in Amazon's HQ2 are massive investments in open space. So this is one right behind their headquarters, phase 2. And then they have another one that fulfills the sector or the approved county plans for an open space that kind of extends across Pentagon City. So it's like really a game changer to us, since we don't have a lot of public open spaces that have an urban focus in downtown National Landing. It's a huge weakness for our downtown, to be honest. So having these investments, which, by the way, Amazon, even though they didn't have responsibility for this entire park, they invested in the whole park and upgraded the whole thing all at once, which was pretty awesome. And then you probably heard about River House. This is another redevelopment infill, which is going to add additional housing. It's actually, I think it's doubling the amount of units on this 35-acre site, mostly on existing parking. Some realignment work happening of roadways to create a larger open space that's attached to Virginia Highlands Park. So we're following this one pretty closely. I know the community is as well. This is a spot where there's likely to be some condo development. I think it's one of the things we hear the most is where can we buy a condo? Where are the new condos coming? And it's a function of the financing system and Arlington's land use policies that have made condos very difficult to deliver for the entities that own property in our urban corridors. Most of the condo development in, say, DC, for example, is happening small scale. It's not happening in the 13, 14-story buildings. It's happening in the 4-story walk-ups or conversions. We just don't have that capacity. I'm not going to get into it, but it's a big part of the missing middle strategy, is to kind of help figure out ways to deliver condo development at a smaller scale. How did we get here? Did Amazon just like conjure up all of this development? And the answer is no. I said it earlier, Arlington has a legacy of really amazing planning, and it's built off of these plans. The 1970s Pentagon City sector plan, the Crystal City sector plan passed in 2010. And then Pentagon City, in Alexandria, Potomac Yard has another 7.5 million square feet on deck as well. All that is paired with incredible investments in mobility, right? You can't just do growth. You have to pair it with mobility infrastructure. Now, when we say mobility infrastructure, it's not necessarily adding lane miles. That doesn't work in urban downtowns. You're adding capacity for the utilization of existing facilities and expanding transit access. Those are the tools by which you make sure you provide enough ways to get around for your growth. So the $4 billion that's on the table is on deck to make National Landing the most connected downtown in the region for sure, potentially throughout the country. It's $4 billion public funding has been committed locally, Commonwealth, and federally. 7 major projects that we're tracking very closely. Potomac Yard Station in Alexandria. Long Bridge is going to add new rail capacity. We've got a new Crystal City Metro entrance on Crystal Drive, a Route 1 Boulevard project, and then the bridge to the airport, pedestrian bridge to the airport. It's a big one that the bid's been focused on over the years. And then new transit access to Columbia Pike. We don't have transit access right now, all day service to Columbia Pike, which is a real big mistake in my book. You have to have transit between your residential communities along the pike, which is where most of our residential growth is happening in Arlington, to where most of our employment growth is happening. Thankfully, the county does have a plan for that. It's the 16M bus line. It's going to be a premium bus. It's going to pair with the Metroway. It's going to utilize some dedicated lanes in the National Landing downtown, and then shared lanes along Columbia Pike. So these are the big projects that we focus on. On the top here, you see that's the BIDS vision that helped spawn the CC to DCA intermodal connector discussions. It's now a funded project that's in a NEPA process, and it's selected a preferred alternative that the county is going to continue to move towards over the next couple of years, hopefully. And then the Route 1 Boulevard project. I know I'm running out of time. This is a project that was identified by the BID strategic plan several years ago, back 2017-18. The highway that is there today, the elevated highway, isn't in keeping with the walkable vision for downtown National Landing. We want to calm that traffic. We want people to know they're in a downtown. We want to enhance capacity to move people. So this facility would include sidewalks and bike facilities on the sidewalk, separated from the pedestrian space to deliver that. I'm going to breeze through some of these. Route 1 is also a funded project. They just announced actually additional investment on the highway spaghetti of 395. Those bridges are actually rated as deficient. They have to invest in them. They have to either replace them as is, which would be a big mistake, or make them more compatible with today's built environment of National Landing. And so that's the goal, is to kind of turn it into more like a Route 50 Courthouse Road scenario, really calm the vehicles coming in. We also have this incredible opportunity with rail, building a new VRE station. Amtrak is coming. It's a matter of when, just not if. Not if, but when. And we're talking a lot about cross service for MARC. That's the Maryland commuter rail. So imagine we unify these two systems. Yellow is MARC, blue is VRE, and you can get to Baltimore, all day long on that train. And you can get on it here in National Landing. Huge asset.
Rob, just so you know, we're about 9 minutes to 11.
Okay, I will breeze a little bit more quickly. This is the little bit talking around the 16M. We're really focused on people-centric mobility. Downtowns have to do this. It's the only way to move more people with the same amount of space. Like I said earlier, we're not adding lane miles. Can't do it. And we're at a crisis level in this country when it comes to traffic safety. As many people are dying on our roads as are dying by guns. As many people are getting injured on our roads as are being injured by guns. It's a huge travesty. And the only way around that is to take the best in class people-centric model and apply it to our downtowns and then beyond. I think we're going to see a lot about that over the next decade. Very important stuff. And Arlington's really ahead on some of this. They have a Vision Zero policy and $220 million invested here in National Landing to change our streets. So really, really great. I'm going to skip a little bit. I was going to talk a little bit about Amazon, but I think what I wanted to end on is that we're a downtown that competes on place. So of all the mobility projects underway, the private development underway, it almost feels like there's not a square inch that's not being touched of this public realm. And that's a good thing, because we've still struggled to repair our legacy of auto centrality that has made it difficult to compete on place. So we're focused on entertainment. Cinetic Theater, by the way, if you haven't been to Cinetic Theater and you're looking for great theater in Arlington, it's here in Crystal City. Highly recommend. They have a great production for the holiday called Snow Maiden, taking my kids tomorrow. Bolero is a new thing. It's a bowling alley. We didn't have this before. Great thing to do. Alamo opened a few weeks ago. These are all things we didn't have 5 years ago. It's amazing to have these now. This is downtown quality destination attractions. Our parks are being invested in. We're focused on enhancing what we have, plazas and meanwhile spaces, activating, delivering color, happy bits of happenstance, as I said, temporary activations, community events. We have a holiday market actually that's partnering with Melwood, Miracle on 23rd Street this weekend, Friday evening. Great activity to go, tree lighting. Check that out. And then we have a holiday market on Saturday from 10 to 4. That does it. I'm sorry I had to breeze through the last bit of it. I get so excited about what I'm talking about. I hope people found this interesting, and I'm happy to take some questions if we still have some time after I drink of water.
Okay. You've talked a lot about expanding residential space. Are there new schools being planned to absorb the additional children?
So that's always a topic of discussion. I know this part of Arlington has been looking at schools for a new elementary school in particular for at least the last 5 years. Interesting, the way that Arlington does their planning. Schools has a separate planning budget and separate capital budget. They follow what the plans do, right? So the schools are kind of on task, as I understand it. Now that plans are passed, they've got to keep up with the growth. That's not easy. I remember when I first came to Arlington and then walked around with the economic development director, they were closing schools. Energy efficiency. They were closing schools and trying to figure out how to repurpose and whatnot, and that changed very rapidly. I think we're seeing that in lots of downtowns where people are choosing to live. So it's definitely something that has to be focused on. I know everybody is eyeing sites, and we totally support figuring out how to invest in an urban elementary school that would be located in a place that is easily accessible to families that live in National Landing, which there are. We actually have very large units in some of our older stock, 2 and 3 bedroom units that have lots of families. So it is an important consideration, and we're definitely keeping our eye on that too.
I saw one senior focused building planned in the River House redevelopment. Are there any other senior living communities planned in National Landing?
So that is a great question. It's another, I'm just going to bring up that slide if I can. It's another type of housing that is difficult to deliver in the current regime of Arlington County's urban villages. We have a lot of owners that are actually REITs. And they're not good at building senior housing. They actually have to find a partner to do that. So my understanding is that it's difficult to finance those kinds of projects. I know it was for River House. My understanding is it's a commitment that JBG Smith is seeking to make as part of that development, and they are looking to find a partner that will help them deliver. Same thing with the condos. They're probably not going to actually develop or design the condos. They got to partner with a developer that's for whom that's their specialty.
I have a question here about where exactly is the water park located? Or anybody that's never actually been there?
Sure. The water park is located along Crystal Drive. I'm going to try and find it. Between 15th and 18th Street. So really easily accessible by Metro. It's directly adjacent to the trail, to the Mount Vernon Trail. So it's this little gray box right here. Number 40, I think. Does that help?
Yeah. Next question is about the Pentagon City Library and Senior Community Center. Are they going to stay as they are, or is that site slated for redevelopment?
So that's a county-owned facility and property. If there were any changes to that, it would be driven by Arlington. I know it is one of those spots that people talk about for a potential school, as well as a bigger, more substantive community center. I'm not aware of any capital projects heading towards that, or any planning efforts headed towards that. But it's definitely a spot I'm sure everybody's thinking about, how that can be made into a how value could be added to that site. I think you might recognize there's another county-owned property adjacent to it. It's the old firehouse, which is just used for storage at the moment. So it's a lot of space. Counties, space constrained. Obviously, if any of that were to happen, I know we would be strong advocates of making sure it had all of the existing uses preserved and enhanced further to support the populations that are using it now.
I have a question.
How much? Go ahead, Arvind.
Yeah, my question is regarding your vision regarding the safety in terms of both and reaching by the EMTs or the other, because of the variety of structures. How are you envisioning that kind of a process in terms of physical safety as well as the health safety?
So I think your question really revolves around emergency response.
Correct.
Okay. So all the development and projects that get approved go through reviews by Arlington County's system, and they could consider all of those things. So fire access, they've got all kinds of regulations and rules and policies that they have to follow as they design their buildings to support life safety. So we put a lot of faith in Arlington's system to deliver on those. Where we're really focused on life safety issues is in this public realm. We really want to move the needle on making our streets safe and feeling safe, so that people feel comfortable walking and riding two-wheeled mobility devices around in ways that everybody feels safe.
So there is a substation there in the area of the park or anywhere substation?
Electrical?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's actually several major electrical upgrades happening. There's one right in the neighborhood. I think it's right around, where am I? Right around here, kind of Aurora Highlands. And then down on 4 Mile Run, there's a huge substation that's getting some investment to support the additional growth. So all this stuff happens in tandem. Dominion has to respond to the growth. They don't build the growth ahead of time. They kind of have to respond to it. I mean, there's always some capacity, but they have to respond to the development as it happens.
Rob, we've got a couple of questions here. You've highlighted a lot of new residential development coming in. How much of that is going to be affordable housing?
So the majority of the projects are going to be market rate, though it's important to point out that there's been a very large commitment made by Arlington in particular to deliver affordability across the board. Arlington has an affordable housing master plan, and that plan envisioned adding, I think, 2,000 committed affordable units under, I want to say it's 80% AMI, but it might be 60% AMI by 2040. It doesn't have a lot of tools, to be honest, to deliver it unless development comes, right? So Arlington doesn't have a housing authority. which is normally the mechanism by which urban areas deliver affordable housing. It relies on an affordable housing trust fund that they then use to partner with affordable housing nonprofit developers. So that mechanism doesn't deliver a lot of housing in our urban corridors because it's so expensive to build in those urban corridors. So they often wind up building them elsewhere throughout the county, like the Highway, Columbia Pike, which isn't really the vision for affordable housing you want. You want to have affordable housing in your employment center areas so that people can live where they work, kind of a thing. But as projects are approved as part of the community benefits package, they usually negotiate a proportion of units to the affordable housing stock as committed affordable units. That process alone can't deliver. You'd have to build, I think I calculated it one day, based on the pace they were at, they'd have to build 22,000 residential units to meet the 2040 goals. But it's not nothing, right? So it's great to have committed units in every single building. And then another tool that's been used is as units get approved in one building, if an owner has another building, they can commit more units in that building. So River House has some additional units that are committed. That was another tool that's added to our stock, our anticipated stock. And then finally, something that was unprecedented in Arlington, commercial development did not historically deliver affordable units in any capacity. Both of Amazon's projects, as part of their approvals, they provided I think it's upwards of $55 million to Arlington's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And when you leverage that money, that can deliver you probably $500 million worth of investment, probably more than that, actually. And that's going to be used for projects in National Landing. And the other thing Amazon did, they financed a deal for Washington Housing Conservancy. It's a affordable housing nonprofit to purchase Crystal House, the two Crystal House buildings. Those are going to be converted slowly over time into, I think it's 600 committed affordable units across the spectrum of affordability. And Amazon purchased from the previous developer the development rights for infill development for another 900 units. Amazon donated that to Arlington County. So Arlington County has development rights for, I think it's 900 additional units along East Street. So right next to 23rd Street to build a collection of affordable housing projects. Probably some market rate, some affordable will be part of the mix. But it's an incredible investment that's going to deliver. I think we're actually, when you add all those things up that I just mentioned, is getting us really close to hitting that 2,000 unit goal ahead of 2040 deadline.
Well, Rob, on that positive note, we should draw this to a close. We've had other questions in the chat box, which maybe you can quickly take a look at. We're going to thank you and all the people who came to join us today. Gary, you want to stop recording?
Yeah.
Oh, can I just say one thing is,
Yes.
I'm happy if you all want to email me any questions afterwards, you can do it consolidated, but I'm also, you can email me directly at rob@nationallanding.org. And then you're happy to, you can also peruse our website, nationallanding.org. We do have a lot of events. Definitely want to check out Cinetic Theater. I can't say more positive things about them. It's Arlington.
I've been to a few performances. Gary just was at, what'd you go to? Dracula?
Dracula.